Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have a nice game to share with you from the 2007 Linares Tournament. On the white end, Vishy Anand, and he's playing against Magnus Carlsen. Okay, on board, Ruy Lopez. And in this one, we have a closed Ruy. Some security now for the e-pawn. Bishop is kicked back. Black secures e5. This frees up the knight from its defensive role. So nearby, he's ready to hunt the bishop. White says, not so fast. I have a square if you go in for that. And I'm also prepping a d4 advance. After castles, a little bit more prep work by white. b4, playing d4, commonplace here, h3. This cuts out the pin on the knight. More long-term, white has that flight square. If white doesn't play in this way, if he doesn't preface d4 with h3, this pin on the knight is irritating. Black's now threatening to knock out essentially two defenders of d4. One of the benefits in playing d4, one of the benefits of having this pawn on d4 is staying flexible, keeping black guessing. Am I going to take? Am I going to push? Am I going to sit? There is value in that, and it becomes much more difficult for white to maintain that flexibility if this pin is allowed. So that's why it is first h3. Black goes hunting for the bishop. Is this really the primary idea? Probably not. No guarantee you're getting that exchange. Sure enough, bishop c2. What was the primary idea behind this move? Really a clearance. Here comes the c-pawn. It's now a contributor for center square. In comes d4, and knight d7, noted as the Keres variation. Black secures e5, and clears the way for the f-pawn to contribute. In this game, it's d5 straight away, so space grab by Anand. How do we play within this structure? Well, first, the knight gets out of the bishop's way and is king in on the c4 square. Knight b to d2, and now g6. So black has a flight square. Black is also maybe now, in some cases, supporting f5. Do know that it's not a good idea for black to rush right in with this pawn break in this position. And the reason for that is because a white knight will end up on an excellent square, e4. So this is how it would play out if you play f5 straight away. This would be an excellent position for white. So in this game, it's g6, and now b4. Now, to my surprise, the top suggestion by the engine is to fianchetto the knight. So in the game, we have the exchange of c-pawns, our first exchange of anything, and then the knight goes forward. But I dug deeper. I was just way too curious to know why this knight, why this is considered the best reply. Here's the thing. If you play knight b7, you have to see pretty deep. You have to know that the only way this knight gets back into activity is to get to the f7 square. There is no guarantee that the knight can find activity on the queen side if you're going to b7 in this position. There's no guarantee you could successfully undermine the b4 point. So this pawn on b4 will be maintained. It can be maintained. And for as long as it's maintained, it dominates the knight. Where else could the knight go? To d8. But from d8, it's the same story. You're boxed out by a knight. Therefore, the knight has to go to d8. The f-pawn has to move. So finally, the knight has at least a semi-active square on f7, controlling some kingside squares. It controls a hole on h6, and maybe even in some cases from the f7 point. That knight could take up a post on e5 if white is trying to break on the king side with f4. There's really a lot to take in before making this committal decision, knight b7. Okay, in this game, the exchange of c-pawns. The knight now goes into c4. Going with the fianchetto in this position is less attractive. This is a big maneuver to get these moves in, and it's much more difficult to get those moves in if the position is more opened. You'll have a better chance of success to get that maneuver in a closed environment. All right, in this game, it is knight A to c4. Pair of knights come off. Bishop b3. Really can't allow this exchange. That pawn is probably going to be won very soon if you allow that. So for instance, let's just say something like this. This one's going to be targeted really soon. Some rook up and over looks attractive. So he simply backs off. Additionally, trying to support the knight with queen c7 is not good, because you would end up in a pin. So the knight simply retreats. Queen bishops are developed. Get to the open file. There go a pair of knights. And now white is there first, getting to the only opened file. Bishop d7. Rook c1. And now how do you stop white from entering? Black plays the best move. It's not fun to play in this way, but it is best, and apparently still a holdable position for black. Yep, the knight is officially cornered to prevent queen c7. We continue. Queen d2, queen b8, and now bishop g5. So this is getting into middle game plan. How do you try and make progress in this position? Well, white sees it as I need to get some dark square bishop exchange in there without the dark square bishop around. These squares are a little bit more sensitive in black's camp. Maybe I can take advantage of that. What do you do from here? The dark square bishop exchange cannot be avoided. We have the bishop capture. I thought to myself, is it possible black can maybe play f6 and prevent the exchange? The answer to that is no. Can you spot why f6 is no good? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, there would be an excellent tactic here for white. If f6, and the tactic is knight takes e5. So as soon as that f-pawn moves, this bishop's eyes widened. There are now tricks. Let's have a look at the different captures. If you take first with the d-pawn, that hurts. Discovered check. The bishop is going to fall. Winning for white. You take with this. Okay, simple enough. We take the bishop. We're up a pawn. And lastly, if you take here, that hurts as well. We get the material back, and we're going to be up the exchange soon enough. So f6 is no good. The dark square bishop will happen. Bishop takes bishop. And now, how to recapture? If you'd like to, go ahead, pause the video. How would you recapture here? Okay, in the game, it's knight takes bishop. They're both pretty close in evaluation, these captures, but the computer does like a little bit more knight takes on g5. Why is that? We're going to see soon enough. We're going to revisit this position, but first, let's get some more moves in. Rook c8 is played, and from here, white ducks the rook exchange and is clearly ready to advance with f4. In the game, we now continue with h6. This is considered a losing move. Can you spot why? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, the best move played in the game, knight e6. This was one of the points behind recapturing on g5 with the knight. White has in mind this x-rayed intersection square, e6. This guy can easily become a star piece because of this knight diving in to this square. Now, let me go back to this position right here and point out what is considered the best continuation. Best is king g7, and then after f4, h6. In this position, this is considered still a move actually, but it's not as effective as when it was played in the game. This is considered the best reply, and from here, f6. This is how the computer wants to play, still apparently in a level position. Now, what are many of the points behind this particular recapture? This is how I view it. If you're recapturing with the queen, you're improving just the queen. But by capturing with the knight, you are improving the knight. In a way, you are taking a step towards improving the rook. He has this idea to advance now the f-pawn with the knight no longer on f3. He wants to do something on the f-file. And in a way, you are also helping to improve, as odd as this may seem, you're helping to maybe improve the light square bishop because of this square, this jump on e6. This guy is not really a contributor in this position, but with the knight on g5, he makes it a contributor. So in a way, I know it's a simplified way to view it, but by recapturing on g5 with the knight, in a way, these three pieces are helped. Okay, we continue in this game. Rook c8, rook exchange is avoided. h6 met with knight e6. The computer at this point, instead of h6, it says go in for queen a7, pin this pawn at least for a second, and then try to get the queens off. Well, basically, this is forcing some endgame situation where black is going to be down a pawn. Computer knows it's getting dangerous here on the king side, and we know who's not going to be around anytime soon to help defend the king side. That is this cornered knight. Okay. Black goes with h6, though, misses this big move, knight e6. So what do you do from here in the game? It's king h7, but the question is, of course, what happens if the knight is captured? We're recapturing, we're on the bishop, and then we can also next take the pawn. This is an enormous position. There's the threat to advance with discovered check. For instance, let's say the queen goes here. We have this, followed by this, taking advantage of the pin, etc. Mate right around the corner. Some other testing try in this position, instead of queen a7, let's say knight b6. We could still go with this discovered check. The knight can clog up this file here, but after this check and f4, this is also a winning continuation for white. There's no fear of a fancy discovered attack against the queen. She could always react with check. This rook will be brought to life soon enough along the f-file. Okay, the knight is not captured in this position. The knight is not captured in this game. Well, he's not captured by a pawn. In this game, it's king h7. In comes f4. Queen a7 check. King h2. Bishop to e8. So even in this position, taking with the knight is no good because look at this. f5. It's well known, two connected passed pawns on the 6th rank. You know, they're frequently more valuable than a rook. So this guy is non-existent. He might as well just be here. Okay. That would be way too strong. I just don't even know how you would even stop this idea to simply push the f-pawn. So the knight is still poisoned. From here, bishop e8, f5, g takes f5 is tried. What else can you do here as black? If you try g5, you're asking for this sacrifice, followed up with f6. This doesn't even allow the queen to do anything on the 7th rank, doesn't allow black an opportunity to play f6 himself, and nearby we have chop and then mate. This is no defense. Rook f5 would be there, and that's just hitting that much harder. Okay, no g5. In the game, g takes f, e takes f, and now simply f6. From here, rook e1. I guess in a way, keeping a close eye on any advance by the pawn. As it turns out in this game, short-lived on e1. Knight c7. There's now a pin on the c file. Bishop d7 unpins the knight. Rook c3. e4. Rook g3. Yeah, it's getting pretty dangerous here. Rook g6. Queen takes h6. Look at all of these pieces. They're really just out of bounds, overcommitted. What do you do? In this game, knight takes knight. White does not take towards the center. He extends the scope of the b3 bishop. D takes on e6. This is now also a target. From here, bishop e7, bishop e8. e7 is now played, and do you see the threat? The bishop's eyes are now completely opened to g8. The threat is check. And then after the king goes to h8, checkmate. Also, the simple threat to take the pawn. Black cannot defend these two moves. He defends the mate threat. The rook is now there. But there goes the d pawn, and there goes this game. Black now resigns. What do? White's now up a pawn and the attack continues. There's no way to even stop the follow-up move queen takes f6. With rook g7, queen g7 ideas, no solution here for black. If we have a look at one test line, for instance, rook e8, queen f6, queen takes pawn, could be met with bishop g8 check. You have to take with the rook. There goes the queen. There goes the game. But after queen takes d6 in this one, it goes no further. Black simply resigns. Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.